Hey, good afternoon to you. It's now 4:07 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program this hour, Congressman Andy Ogles will be with us. He is very focused on getting the nation's capital under control. He's working with Senator Mike Lee on that project. We'll discuss that ahead. And then at 5:30, Mark Spooner joins us from Fairfax County. Very concerned about what's happening in the schools there. Big meeting tomorrow. We'll discuss it all with Mark ahead. Again, 5:30. And you can chat with us at 888-630-9625. 888-630-WMAL. I was laughing pretty heartily in reaction to President Trump signing. He signs a bunch of executive orders. Some of them are more serious. Some of them are just laugh out loud funny and also valuable. Like his decision yesterday to sign an executive order banning paper straws and saying that we need to go back to plastic. Listen to Will Scharf. Again, you've heard that attorney on this program many times talk to President Trump, who you've also heard on this program, discussing getting rid of paper straws.
Next, this is an executive order relating to the use of paper straws. As you've consistently identified, nobody really likes paper straws.
Number one trending. Can you believe it? A paper straw was number one trending for 3 days or something.
The environmental impact of plastic straws versus paper straws is entirely unclear. This has cost both the government and private industry an absolute ton of money and left consumers all over the country wildly dissatisfied with their straws. So we're asking aspects of the federal government, federal departments and agencies to look at their existing procurement processes, and we're asking your Domestic Policy Council to look holistically at this issue to address it, and it really is something that affects ordinary Americans in their everyday lives.
We're going back to plastic straws. These things don't work. I've had them many times, and on occasion they break, they explode. If something's hot, they don't last very long, like a matter of minutes, sometimes a matter of seconds. It's a ridiculous situation. So we're going back to plastic straws. I think it's okay.
That's unbelievable.
And I don't think that plastic's going to affect a shark very much as they're munching their way through the ocean. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have
munching their way through the ocean. That's great. I don't know if that sentence has ever been uttered in English before, but I love it. I love that it was just uttered. Sharks munch their way through the ocean. You heard Will Scharf at the top talk about this whole, like, the environmental impact of plastic straws. By the way, there's no question that there's a lot of plastic in the ocean. You can thank China for that. There's lots of dumping of plastic into the ocean, and that's a terrible thing. We should have clean water, clean air. But this whole thing about, there's so many straws in the ocean. Do you know the backstory on that? Corey, are you familiar with the backstory on the data for this? 500 million straws are used every day. That's the data point that the media have spent many years telling us. 500 million straws every day. How does a nation of just over 300 million people use over 500 million plastic straws every day? I don't use a plastic straw every day. In fact, maybe once a month. I barely use plastic straws. But how do we add up to 500 million a day? Well, the answer is we don't. It was a bogus piece of data that came from a 9-year-old. I'm not kidding. A 9-year-old boy by the name of Milo. They describe him as a young environmentalist. He randomly estimated that Americans are using 500 million straws a day. And then the media said, well, that's good enough. And they ran with it for years. All sorts of places. The New York Times, CNN, NPR, the National Park Service cited it like it was a real thing. It was some kid who just invented it. Like macaroni art, except it became like this scientific orthodoxy. There's 500 million plastic straws. They're being stuck in turtles' noses. And then all of a sudden we got to ban plastic straws. We got to ban plastic straws. Okay, what do you replace them with? And so Trump is tapping into, this is one of those things. And it's just like the efficiency of your dishwasher. It's just like the efficiency of your clothes washer. It's like the value of, or lack thereof, of wind power and solar. It's it's, understanding the difference between electric and gas heat and what people prefer, the gas stove that people prefer over the electric coil stoves, all of that. Trump, Scott Jennings said it recently. He said, Trump has this superpower, which is he finds 80-20 issues. He takes the 80 and then he forces the left to take the 20 because they just want to oppose him. So whatever it is, they're against it. They'll take the 20. Here's another one. Although Trump told Brett Baer yesterday in his interview that he doesn't even think this is an 80-20 issue. He thinks this is 90-10. It's like the whole country wants their plastic straws back. They hate this fighting with the drink. It's disintegrating before your very eyes as you're trying to consume your beverage. It's insanity. It's totally insanity. So President Trump out with an executive order yesterday, to help encourage the resumption of plastic straws, which is, it's so funny that we've even gotten to this point. But this is not a sign of Trump's insanity. That's not Trump being a weirdo. That's the left being weirdos. Trump is uncoiling the weirdness. He's getting rid of it at all these different levels, and that includes with the straw stuff, which, again, you can thank the left for this insanity. Scott is calling in from Lovettsville, line 1. Hello, Scott. You're on the Vince Colonnade Show.
Hey, good evening, sir.
Hey there.
How are you?
I'm doing great.
Yep. As soon as they announced the plastic straw ban, I went on to Jeff Bezos' Amazon, the wonderful Prime, and I ordered 10,000 plastic straws.
You bought 10,000? So do you have 10,000 plastic straws at your house right now?
I have 10,000 plastic straws, and I recycle. I use them on numerous evenings.
Wow. So you use a straw and then you wash it. You keep using it over and over. And so you have basically well over 9,000 on standby right now.
Correct.
That's cool. All right. So did you also stockpile incandescent light bulbs when the government banned those?
I actually went to LED. I like the light. I'm getting older in life. But I do have 12 years worth of food.
Oh, good for you. So you're ready, in other words.
And a creek, and a water distill problem solver for it all.
So you can get clean drinking water?
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever seen one of those life straws? You ever see one of those? Like, that's like you can carry it and it will filter dirty water and you can drink through it in order to make it clean?
Yeah. Yes, sir. I probably have a dozen of them.
Oh, you do? Do they work? Have you ever tried one of those?
I didn't find it necessary at the moment.
Yeah, no, we're not in the dire straits that might require a life straw. I was just curious how they work.
It's not like Adam Sandler on Cajun Man experimentation.
Uh-huh. Right. Yeah, it's not gotten that bad yet.
Right. We're good to go. We have all our straws, all our drinking water. We have our food. We have a pantry full of like paper goods,
Cool. Yeah, so you don't have to rush out for every weather event in order to stockpile toilet paper. You're good to go.
Correct. I have 7 beds, 4 boats, 6 generators. We're good to go.
Man, you're motivating me, Scott. I appreciate that.
And I'll leave you with the cliche.
Please.
Noah was a prepper.
Noah was a prepper. Look how that turned out. You're totally right about that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that.
Have a blessed evening.
You too, sir. You too. So Scott's ready, in other words. I think that's the summary from this entire segment. Scott is prepared, which is cool. He's got a lot of generators. Those life straws, I'm still fascinated by them, how they work. Apparently, well, he's got a dozen of those. All right, so what's the president up to? Another thing that he's up to today that is, well, let's be honest, probably way more impactful than his plastic straw thing, is he is making progress right now in both Ukraine and in the Middle East. We've got a lot of late-breaking developments on that front. Today, the president had the King of Jordan in the Oval Office and answered a number of questions, King Abdullah. And the King of Jordan, the big problem Trump has right now, or the big scenario he's trying to work through, is how do we get people out of Gaza? And how do we get them into places like Jordan and Egypt? Can we get Jordan and Egypt to take civilians from Gaza and relocate them there? while we rebuild Gaza and we make it the paradise it's supposed to be, which is, a gorgeous beachfront property right there in the Middle East that it can be fantastic. And instead it's been destroyed by the drooling terrorists who've lived there. So Trump is trying to figure out, how do we move the civilians? How do we get them out? And so here's what President Trump is saying about Gaza right now, and then I'll get to King Abdullah's remarks today.
You've said before that the U.S. would buy Gaza, and today you just said we're not going to buy Gaza.
We're not going to have to buy. We're going to have Gaza. We don't have to buy. There's nothing to buy. We will have Gaza.
What is that?
No reason to buy. There is nothing to buy. It's Gaza. It's a war-torn area. We're going to take it.
Don't you love how the media operates like everything needs to be some sort of transaction and a contract and like, well, who owns that and what are we going to pay them? And no. At some point you can break through all of that and just be like, no, we're going to take it. And tough. I mean, it is an absolute hellhole right now, and we're going to rescue it.
Hold it. We're going to cherish it. We're going to get it going eventually where a lot of jobs are going to be created for the people in the Middle East. It's going to be for the people in the Middle East, but I think it could be a diamond. It could be an absolute tremendous asset for the Middle East, and you're going to have peace. It's going to bring peace in the Middle East.
He said, we're going to bring peace to the Middle East. Now today, obviously the looming question is like, are American troops getting involved in all of this? What's the plan? And President Trump kept indicating that he says it's Israel. Israel's there. They've got the military. They can handle this, but we've got to take over this area. And we've got to fix it up. Here is King Abdullah today saying that, well, we kind of have a plan. We're going to start taking some of these Palestinians and we're going to work things out with Egypt. Now, this is an environment where Jordan and Egypt have basically refused up to this point to take on Palestinians from Gaza. And this is King Abdullah saying, actually, that door's starting to open thanks to Trump.
And we're going to have some interesting discussions today. I think one of the things that we can do right away is take 2,000 children that are either cancer children or in very ill state to Jordan as quickly as possible, and then wait for, I think, the Egyptians to present their plan on how we can work with the president to work on the Gaza challenges.
So
I want to tell you, excuse me, wait, just please. I didn't know that what you just said, 2,000 children with cancer or other problems, and that's really a beautiful gesture. That's really good, and we appreciate it.
We appreciate it. And that other piece, of course, is that Jordan is saying we're going to get together with Egypt and we're going to talk about what we can do to accommodate this plan as President Trump tries to bring an end to everything. One thing, yesterday he made a pretty big and obvious threat about what's going to happen to Hamas if all of the rest of the hostages are not released by, he said, 12 o'clock on Saturday. Corey, I don't think I saw a PM or an AM on that, lunchtime or midnight, but he said 12 o'clock on Saturday. You better release every one of these hostages or else all hell will break out. Here's President Trump last night.
Well, I would say this, and I'm going to let that because that's Israel's decision. But as far as I'm concerned, if all of the hostages aren't returned by Saturday at 12 o'clock, I think it's an appropriate time. I would say cancel it and all bets are off and let hell break out. I'd say they ought to be returned by 12 o'clock on Saturday, and if they're not returned, all of them, not in drips and drabs, not 2 and 1 and 3 and 4 and 2. Saturday at 12 o'clock, and after that, I would say all hell is going to break out.
Some very pregnant pauses as he delivers that message. Yeah, careful now is what the president is saying. Hamas issued a very meek statement in response to that last night. Hamas spokesman Sami Abu Zuhri saying, according to Newsweek, that hostages will only be freed if Israel abides by a ceasefire agreement reached last month. Quote, Trump must remember there is an agreement that must be respected by both parties, he said. It's not much of a statement. Trump just said all hell's going to break loose if you don't release these hostages, and they kind of muttered out a response. Well, there's an agreement, I think. Yeah, we'll see what happens. But the president getting forceful, definitely in a way that Biden was never capable of. Let's be honest. All right. President Trump, Elon Musk meeting in the Oval Office, chatting with the press, which means surely there's news to be found there. We'll keep an eye on that, bring that to you as it comes out. And then Congressman Andy Ogles is going to join us just moments away. We're going to talk to him about what it's going to take to get D.C. back under control. President Trump joining in on that mission this week. A lot of news developing there. We'll cover it next on the Vince Colonnese Show. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 4:35 here at News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, Mark Spooner joins us from Fairfax County. We will talk to him about what's going on in the Fairfax County schools. A big meeting about what they're teaching the kids set to take place tomorrow. Mark will join us with the latest there. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Washington, D.C. is unfortunately a chaotic capital that's had a lot of crime problems, a lot of homelessness problems, just lots of problems under the left's control. A couple members of Congress are looking to change all that. They'd like to strip away what we know as home rule in Washington, D.C., and restore the power to operate the nation's capital to the United States Congress. The name of this bill? Bringing Oversight to Washington and Safety to Every Resident. BOWSER. The BOWSER Act. That's pretty great. Joining me now, the man who introduced it in the House, Congressman Andy Ogles from Tennessee's 5th Congressional District. He's also a member of the House Financial Services Committee and the Freedom Caucus. Congressman, good to have you back on the show, sir.
Well, thanks for having me on. Yeah, I think the BOWSER Act, that may be a slight ultimate troll, but I digress. But great to be on.
It's super clever. I love it so much. Congressman, obviously the point of this is you would like to restore some sanity to our capital city. Tell us about this.
Well, I mean, I think anyone who looks at this objectively recognizes the fact that Washington, D.C. is poorly run, whether it's just the impoverished nature of the city. And you have that in quote-unquote urban areas, and that's a challenge for any city. But the crime rate, the murder rate, the violent crime is consistently among the worst in the nation. And so, technically, I would argue that D.C. having home rule is unconstitutional. Myself and Senator Lee were making to restore this. And again, it's one of those, you have multiple members of Congress like myself who have been mayors. Granted, I was mayor of a smaller community, but there's a lot of experience of doing things and doing it well that we can bring to D.C., real-life experience that currently is not being applied in the nation's capital.
So your counterpart in the Senate for this bill is Senator Mike Lee, is introduced it there. What are the chances that this is more than just like kind of a ceremonial gesture? Obviously, so many bills are presented that are really meant to send a message more than to actually be passed. Do you think this bill has a real chance at becoming a law?
Actually, I think it does. I mean, I think we have a real opportunity to force this conversation. So obviously, there's many steps along the way. Yeah. But again, so as I walk through our nation's parks, so this past spring, I'm walking through along the Washington Monument with my kids, and there was trash and there was litter and there was homelessness, and I'm just thinking this is the capital of the most powerful nation in the world. This is our front porch, and this is what tourists from all over the world are seeing. I don't think we're putting our best foot forward, not to mention the crime, not to mention the other things for the people who live here and have to live in this. I mean, and when I have folks who from the district are visiting D.C., I tell them, I said, look, I love visiting D.C., but also know where you're at, and it's easy to get one street over too far and suddenly find yourself in a place that maybe you shouldn't be. Right. And that should not be the case, whether you're a resident or a tourist, whether tourists from our own country or from abroad. And so, again, I think there's a real opportunity to have this conversation, to talk about accountability, yes, to root out the wokeness that has infected this city, and quite frankly, the mismanagement that has infected this city.
Yeah, Congressman Andy Ogles, I mean, we were once again reminded of some of the chaos of the city yesterday. There was a man who was shot and killed in Union Station just yesterday. That is one of the city's most beautiful buildings, but it's become a tough place for people to go. And that's often the place that tourists enter the city if they come by train, or they park their car there, and to basically go to a place where, we've seen increasing homelessness, panhandling, fentanyl overdoses, and unfortunately even murder at times. It's just another sign that something needs to change.
Well, and even as a member of Congress or members of Congress, we've had a couple of members that, whether they were going home or coming to work, have been mugged. And so you have members of Congress that it's not necessarily safe for us to go to work. And so again, if you look at, Wallet Hub, where does D.C. consistently rank? At the bottom of the list.
Yep.
And again, they're looking at objective data, comparing it to other cities across the nation. So this isn't me picking on Washington, D.C. This is not you picking on Washington, D.C. This is us merely pointing out the fact that, as a member of Congress, as a resident, as a tourist, it's not the safest place to be. And
Yep.
that can change. The amount of resources that are in this city, it's the nation's capital. It's where you have Congress and the Supreme Court and the President of the United States. There's no reason why you can't walk through every street, morning, midday, or night and not feel safe. But you don't today because of mismanagement.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not. Yeah, you're right. It's not about picking on the city, although it is fun to pick sometimes on the city officials who think that D.C. deserves to become a state. It's like so preposterous. But I will say this is about caring about the city. What you and I want for sure is an improved, safe, beautiful, clean American capital, and that's not where we are right now. On the prospects for this bill, for the BOWSER Act, you said that you think it has a decent chance of actually clearing the House and Senate. Does President Trump support this? What do you know about that?
Well, to be clear, I have not spoken to the president about this. Obviously, we're going through the budget, the reconciliation process. President Trump is setting records at the pace at which he's working, hundreds of executive actions. And so this is on the priority list right now. It's not at the top, but that is where myself and the senator will work together to make sure that at the appropriate time, we do a hard push for this.
Yes.
Obviously, we've got a longer runway for something like this. But again, I think this is an important question. And if for some reason, let's say hypothetically, it doesn't happen this year, it puts Washington, D.C. on notice. We're watching. We're willing to take action. And if you don't clean the house, we're going to clean it for you.
Right.
Now, I'm all for this. I introduced this. I started this conversation last year, as have other members before me. But I'm very serious about this. And again, I'm biased to Tennessee. I come from southern middle Tennessee. It's my home. I love it. I'm biased to that area.
Yeah.
But I love coming to the nation's capital. I love serving here. And for those residents of this city, for all those tourists that will and who have come, I wanted to restore it to its grandeur and its place as the jewel. When people from around the world come here, they say, wow, that nation has it together. That is truly the most powerful nation on the planet Earth. And
the other piece is, like, if you do have success getting this legislation passed, whether or not the president supports it right away, it is leverage for him in his negotiations with the city to get them to clean things up. If this is hanging over their heads, that'll scare them into submission.
Oh, absolutely. And again, you see, we've seen on full display the president's style, whether it's the 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico or the tariffs against Colombia, which you see now, again, some of the other foreign partners who, quite frankly, they claim to be our ally, but they're not doing their fair share of the heavy lifting. Yep. And so as we go forward, whether it's peace in the Middle East and what do we do with Gaza, whether it's what do we do on our northern border. A lot of people don't talk about the northern border, but one of the larger pipelines of fentanyl coming into this country is coming through Canada. They needed to do a better job of policing that. Or we're talking about something like this, home rule for D.C. Trump goes big. He negotiates hard, art of the deal, and that's part of this equation as we move forward to look.
Yes.
D.C., I'll say it again, you clean your act up or we're going to clean it up for you.
Okay, and then, Congressman, is this bill, there's no talk of including this in reconciliation, right? This would be a separate piece of legislation entirely.
Yeah, this would be separate. I mean, we have enough on our plates with the debt ceiling and the budget and all the other things, but this is, and quite frankly, I think this is a big enough issue, a standalone issue that we can have after reconciliation, after March 14th, as we get across one of those bigger hurdles, and again, to start pushing this as we go forward. Okay, so on one other big element of what's going on in Washington, D.C. This week, President Trump is, according to the Washington Post, expected to order a crackdown on D.C. crime and homeless encampments.
He's expected to issue an executive order. It sounds like at this point it will be on Friday, that will seek to ratchet up penalties and enforcement for violent and petty crimes, to clear out homeless encampments and clean graffiti up in the District of Columbia. This is according to 3 people who've been briefed on this. Additionally, D.C. crime victims, community members, are being asked by the White House right now to join the president for this event on Friday, according to a report by Axios. Congressman, do you know anything about the president's efforts here, and are you encouraged by what you're hearing?
Absolutely. Like I said, I, as a newly elected member of Congress, as I walked around this beautiful city, as we drove under bridges and those sorts of things, I was taken aback at how poorly the city was run. And also, I was looking at it through the lens of someone who was just a mayor. In Tennessee, we call it a county executive, so I ran the entire county. And that would never pass in my community. It shouldn't pass in the nation's capital. So I applaud the president's efforts. But I think, like with many of his executive orders, it's good for a stroke of the pen, and it's good for as long as he is in office. But we've got to look towards a longer solution, which would be to codify this and make sure there's accountability, which would of course mean putting D.C. under the jurisdiction of Congress. And maybe there's a pathway going forward where they could get home rule again. But right now, as it stands, when you look at the crime, when you look at the encampments, when you look at the number of murders that occurred in 23, 24, and now into 25, there's already been roughly 13. I mean, that's not acceptable, and that doesn't include the one that was yesterday. And so we've got to do something. I'm hitting the panic button. This is crisis mode for D.C. Yeah. We are in the golden era of America under Trump's leadership. We're already seeing it, the way the our global partners are treating us, and I think you're going to see more tourism here into this city. What I want those people to be is safe when they get here. Amen.
Hey, the 2-block stretch in front of the White House, 16th Street, right now has a giant obscene painting on it. It's the Black Lives Matter Plaza, they call it. It was designed by Mayor Bowser in order to be a protest symbol against President Trump back when he was in office in 2020. It's still there now. It's 2025. Congressman, do you know if there's any effort underway to get rid of that and reopen 16th Street so that the people of Washington, D.C. can use it again?
Well, I don't know of anything about that specifically, but again, what I would say is that, all lives matter, regardless of race or creed. And if we need to have a conversation on any particular one of those issues across that landscape, then let's have that. But again, that area should be open and accessible, both from an economic standpoint, through a passability standpoint, and again, it should reflect the entirety of our nation, just not one specific, lane there.
Yeah, and she put that in there as we were having riots wreck our city, and right. And she did it at taxpayer expense, and it was literally to try and protest Trump. It was so ludicrous. That's long overdue to be removed and get that back open. That's a beautiful area of the city. People should have access to it. All right. At any rate, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just about to close out, but go ahead, make your point, sir.
Well, I was just going to say, look, you can agree or disagree with Trump. What I can say, whether it's internationally or domestically, we are safer today under this administration, just 3 weeks in, than we were 2 months ago under the Biden administration. So I'm on the Financial Services Committee. I'm also on the Homeland Security Committee, and I'm chairman of the Counterterrorism Caucus. And what I can tell you is the southern border is not secure. You know that. We know that. Yeah. We know that we have terrorists in this nation that were let in under the Biden administration. And so as we go forward, we've got to be proactive in addressing the problems this country has. Look, we're not perfect, but by God, we're still the best country on earth. Let's have those honest conversations, but then let's stop labeling people and understand that we are Americans. We are red, white, and blue and apple pie. And as long as we stand on those principles, the principles of our founders, we win every single time. The moment that we divide ourselves is the moment that our enemies see us as weak, and that's when they attack, whether it's in Israel, whether it's in Ukraine, whether it's here on the homeland.
Yes, yeah. No, our strength is our humanity. That's really the message from that. Hey, Congressman, thank you very much. Good to talk to you today, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, Congressman Andy Ogles of Tennessee. The BOWSER Act, I love the name of that thing. One of his colleagues in the House, Congressman Andrew Clyde, has also been big on this issue of bringing D.C. back under control. And he told the Daily Caller a couple months ago, December, I think, that it's long past time for the goofy protest garbage in front of the White House to be painted over and get the street reopened. Quote, the street needs to go back to the way it was, said Congressman Andrew Clyde. Yeah, they're literally blocking traffic from a perfectly good street. It was one of the coolest places to drive right down 16th and be looking at the White House here in America, the nation's capital. Let's take a phone call. I've got Berta calling in from Warrenton now on line 2. Hello, Berta. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hello, Vince. Thank you for taking this call. I've waited a while because there's been so much going on. I didn't really know where this would fit in. But several days ago, almost weeks ago, I heard on the radio, and the only radio I listened to was WMAL, that had built a viewing stand or a reviewing stand for the inaugural parade to the tune of over $1 million. It was supposed to fit about 150 people. It was equipped with inside heating. I mean, it obviously sounded pretty nice. Well, the weather turned bad, so I never heard anything about it. However, it was very close to the inauguration, and I have a feeling that that stand was built. So with all that stuff that's going on as far as fraud and everything else, I'm just wondering where that money came from and if indeed the stand was built. So
they burned through it. You're right. They burned through it. They built a viewing stand out at the Wilson building, and they put it there for the inauguration. Of course, we know how that turned out because all of the events were moved indoors for the inauguration, so there was no use for the viewing stand. But how does a viewing stand cost $1.5 million? You can build an entire house for less than that. How does a viewing stand in front of a building cost $1.5 million?
I was disgusted, and I never heard another word about it. And I thought, well, the one person that should know about it or should have your refreshed on this is Vince. I won't keep you. You are my very favorite. I absolutely love the way you do your shows. You're incisive. You're concrete. I just love you. I'm a fan. I'm your president of your fan club.
Berta, I'm a fan of you. Thank you very much. Very much for that call.
Thank you. Don't forget about the stand.
I'm not forgetting about it. I'm obsessed with it now.
Okay.
And by the way, I remember in the lead up to the inauguration, I was watching all the security briefings ahead of the inauguration for obvious reasons, because I'm a nerd, but also because I was concerned about, the security for the president and everybody else. And people would ask Muriel Bowser, hey, like, what's the deal with the cost? And she would become indignant that people would ask. She's like, we do this every inauguration. We always build the stand. It's just more expensive to do it now. $1.5 million? That's absurd. What kind of corrupt arrangement do you have that it costs $1.5 million to build a stand?
I needed to pass this along to you. Thank you, Vince.
Thanks, Berta. Thanks for getting me all angry again. I appreciate it. There's Berta, the president of my fan club. Which, how about that? At least I have one person in a fan club. Can you call it a club? Maybe. Whatever. Hey, coming up, more of your calls, and Mark Spooner will join us. We've got some news out of Fairfax County. The school system there is trying to figure out how quickly they could talk to your kids about sex. Yeah, it's insane. Mark will talk about it. It's all ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show.